I haven't seen you enough to have a bio for you. So I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, the steps are right over there. Thank you. That this wonderful lady that I just know by reputation, even though I don't have a professional bio for you, I'm so sorry that I didn't have that. But we're so glad that she is here to share with what's on her heart this morning. I'm going to tell you, after 4 dudes last night, it's kind of nice to have a very beautiful lady up here speaking to you. Okay. Welcome, Katherine Albrecht, please.
Thank you. I will do that.
Excuse me, I'm getting this stuff here.
All right, and my remote. Let me just make sure I got my act together here. How do we kick it up?
Right there.
There we go.
Yeah, you're going to use a lot.
Okay.
Just put that on.
I gotcha. Good morning. What a beautiful group. It's great to see you guys. I'm Dr. Katherine Albrecht, and if you're not familiar with my work, I guess I've kind of been known as the RFID lady. I first found out about RFID back in 2002, and I've spent the last probably 7 years of my life researching it, telling people about it, sounding the alarm about it, and cautioning people about it. But what is less well known about me is that I come at this from a Christian perspective. Back in 1999, when I founded Caspian Consumer Privacy, the group that I've run now, I guess, 10 years, to alert people about the dangers of supermarket frequent shopper cards, the Safeway cards and the Kroger cards that people carry in their wallets, that are used to make detailed records of everything that you purchase and essentially serve as a numbered card to buy food. Very problematic. When I first started that, I started that because of something that had happened to me many years before. When I was a little girl in the Midwest at the age of 8 years old, and my grandmother sat me down after we'd been grocery shopping, so you can tell my interest in grocery stores there, and she said, "Kathy," and back then I wasn't Dr. Katherine Albrecht, I was just Kathy, and she said, "I got something really important I want to tell you. There's going to come a time when people will not be able to buy or sell unless they have a mark on their right hand or their forehead. And we don't know when it's going to happen, we don't know how it's going to happen, but one thing we know for sure, it's in the Bible, and if it's in the Bible, it will happen." And she said, "And I want you to promise me that you will never take that mark. And I want you to promise me that you will sit your own children and grandchildren down and have this same talk with them." So I made those promises, a little farmhouse in the Midwest. My grandfather was actually a mink rancher, so we were kind of out in the middle of the country. And as I'm looking around the kitchen, we had just been grocery shopping at a Kroger. Ironically, that's actually where I started my campaign against supermarket cards years and years later. But as we were unpacking the groceries in that little farmhouse kitchen, I said to my grandmother, "You mean people won't be able to buy or sell anything, like even groceries?" And she said, "Especially groceries, because if they don't sign up and take the mark of the beast, they'll starve." So in that, 30 plus years ago, in that little farmhouse in Ohio, 1970s, I looked around and I said, how is that possible? I had, at that time in my life, never seen a credit card. I had never seen a computer. Computers took up entire city blocks. They certainly weren't in supermarkets, for heaven's sakes. They certainly weren't every place you would go to buy and sell. There couldn't possibly be a computer there. That didn't occur to me. I couldn't even imagine how you could identify everybody on the planet, great and small, rich and poor, free and bond, or enslaved or imprisoned, as the Bible describes. Much less could I imagine a way that you could get every single place where things are bought and sold on board with something like that. So my little 8-year-old brain was kind of whirring away, and I thought about this and thought about it. And I said a couple of things. I said, first of all, I absolutely will never take that mark myself. But something else. If it's not thousands and thousands of years from now, you know, I'll pass it on to my kids and their descendants, and someday, way, way in the future when this happens, then hopefully my descendants will know. But if it starts happening in my lifetime, I'm going to pick up that Bible, and I'm going to read it, and I'm going to know that what's in it is absolutely true. Because from my vantage point in the 1970s, the chances of any of that coming together were so slim, it would have been as though somebody had told me, you know, I don't know, some Aztec prophecy, when a purple flower fills half the sky, it means to pull out these scriptures and read them. You'd go, well, that's never going to happen. So that's kind of the perspective that I had. If that occurs, then I'm going to take this real seriously. And I have to say that that experience at the age of 8 years old, my family went on to live in Los Angeles. I've gone to Harvard, I've been in lots of liberal institutions. I've certainly not lived a life that would cause a person to become a devout, committed, Bible-believing, born-again Christian. I'll say that. Had it not been for my grandmother sitting me down in that farmhouse and having that conversation with me at that time, I doubt I would be saved today. All right. With that background, two things I want to let you know. I'm going to do a presentation. I want to tell you why we are so much closer now to the mark of the beast than we were 2 years ago when I last spoke at this event. I also want to tell you what I'm doing about it. As a tribute to my own grandmother, Evelyn Muriel Woodall, who was one of my absolute idols as a child. I mean, she practically raised me while my mother was in school, and I loved her dearly. She passed on the year after she gave me that warning. So I want to mention that to all of you because I see that there are probably a lot of grandparents in the room right now. You may not have a lot of time. You may not be here next year. And I certainly, by the grace of God, hope that you are. But if you have grandchildren, you have children, you need to be telling them this information now. Now, I've gone on to get a doctorate in education from Harvard University. I've taught school. I do a lot of educational consulting. I work with a lot of young people. And I can tell you there's a very disturbing trend that I've seen among kids, 14, 15, 16, 17. You talk to them about the mark of the beast, and they'll say, oh, yeah, that's that song by so-and-so. Oh, yeah, that's the 666 in that Black Sabbath song or whatever it might be. But you say, do you know what that is in the Bible? And some of these kids, do I need to turn this one off? I don't know why I'm echoing. Some of these kids have gone to Sunday school all their lives. They've gone to vacation Bible school in the summer. They have attended church every Sunday, and no one has ever sat them down and talked to them about the mark of the beast. I'm telling you, the time that we are living in, if we are not doing that actively with this young generation, there's going to be nobody else to do it. Madison Avenue is not going to do it through the television. Hollywood is not going to do it through the movies, and to the extent they do, they're going to lie to your kids and tell them the wrong thing. And the churches aren't doing it. Do you know there's an article out there, those of you who research online, look it up. It's called Megachurch, Megatech. Megachurch, Megatech is in megatechnology. And in this article, it actually opened up and talked about sort of reaching forward your hand and pressing it to a fingerprint reader to get into Sunday school. There are churches across this country. Hang on. Can you hear me? All right. There are churches across this country, the kind of churches that have 5,000 and 10,000 people coming in on a Sunday, that find their numbers so enormous that they've got to start treating the children going into the Sunday school like inventory. And they're actually installing fingerprint readers so that those kids can be more easily processed into Sunday school. Churches, mind you. These are churches. This is not schools. This is not the Department of Immigration. This is not Customs or Border or Homeland Security. These are Christian churches on our own soil in our own country who understand so little about what the prophetic books of the Bible tell us about this time we're living in right now, that they are using automated fingerprint readers to get kids into Sunday school. I spoke, and we'll be talking about this in just a moment, when I flew down to Florida to protest the microchip implants that they were putting into Alzheimer's patients. I said, you know, Lord, I got to do something about this. I cannot allow these people to be implanted with these chips because these are people who have Alzheimer's. They have no ability to say no. They don't even understand what's being done to them. These are people in a home who have to have constant care because they don't understand their own surroundings. So we flew down there, and as we were planning this event, and I'll show you some pictures of it in a minute, but as we were planning this event, I said, well, this needs to be not just a protest like my usual protest against RFID. This has serious spiritual implications. This needs to be a prayer vigil. So we got on the phone, and we called up all the churches in West Palm Beach, Florida, myself and a volunteer. We got a phone book. And we called all the Baptist churches, and we called all the Pentecostal churches, and we called all of the congregational churches, and we went through the list, and we called them all. Not one single church was willing to send a pastor to support us in that prayer vigil or to say a prayer at our event. Not one. Now, I'll tell you, when that phone rang, ring, 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 hi, my name's Dr. Katherine Albrecht. I'm a researcher in RFID microchips. I'm concerned we need to, do something about this. Can we maybe have a pastor, an associate pastor, a deacon, somebody who can join us and just lead us in prayer? And every phone call went pretty much like this, one of two things. Either they said, well, what are you protesting? Well, they're putting microchip implants into Alzheimer's patients. Well, why are they doing that? Well, they're saying they're doing it so they can't wander away and get lost from the facility. Well, that's a good thing, don't you think? That was response number one. I had so many church secretaries tell me that that was a very good idea, and why would I object to that? If I didn't get that response, the other response I got was, Well, why are you worried about that? Don't you know the rapture's just going to take us all away before that happens? What kind of lack of faith are you suffering from, lady? For real. Now, let me tell you about the grace of God through all of this. This is a beautiful testimony I want to share with you. So after all these phone calls, you can imagine I'm getting a little discouraged. You know, Lord, do you not want me to go? Am I just alone here? You know those feelings you get. You're like, Lord, please, please, the next phone call, let it be this one. No answer. So I stepped out on faith, and I said, well, if I have to, I'll just go down there to Florida, and I'll just lead the prayer myself. If it comes down to it, I'll just say the prayer myself. I'll just do it, Lord, if that's what you want. So we get out there, fly down, we meet in a restaurant, we get our signs, we're interviewed by the Associated Press, we got the television out there, we're talking about all the problems with this, and then we start our march, 1 mile to this facility, where we're going to stand out in front where they're chipping these people. We're walking down the street, we're marching along, there's a long crowd of us, we got our signs up, and a truck pulls up alongside me. Window rolls down, it's a gentleman maybe in his 50s. He says, I couldn't help but notice your signs. I totally support what you're doing. I'm a pastor. Is there any way I can help you? So the Lord sent us a pastor as we stepped out in faith, walking to that event. It was awesome. So I tell you that story because I'm about to jump into some stuff that's pretty scary. And I want you to know, I was a little bit scared walking down that street, realizing that I was going to have to say a prayer outside of this facility that maybe I wasn't qualified or ready to do. So there are going to be moments that we're going to feel that same way in the coming months, in the coming years, as this battle heats up. And this is a battle, and it's a hardcore spiritual battle, and we all feel it. As this battle heats up, I want you to remember that story when I'm there on my knees going, Lord, please let it be the next phone call. Please let it be the next church. If the congregational churches won't do it, maybe it'll be a Episcopalian church. I'll try anybody. Lord, please let one of these people respond to me. And I felt really alone. And there's going to be times we're all going to feel that. And that is part of that walk in faith. And when you step out in faith, you know you're doing the right thing, then He always comes through for you. Sometimes He'll let you go right to that last moment, but He always comes through. Amen indeed. All right. That being said, now let me scare you just a little bit, but I want you to realize you've always got the Lord holding your hand through the whole thing. Here we go. Okay, let's talk about global ID because it's the step that we're moving into. Last time I was here, I talked about RFID generally in products and shoes and clothing. Now I want to talk about it hardcore in your wallet and potentially being mandated by the government. As of June 1st of this year, American citizens can no longer leave their country and return without an RFID identity document. You must have a chip to get back into your own country right now, as of about 2 months ago. What does that mean? That means that as you're leaving the country, you can get out of the country, you can just use your passport, but when you try to get back in, you've got to either have, well, there's your new U.S. passport. As of 2005, the end of 2005, they all have an RFID tag in the cover. Now, it used to be that you could just drive back across the border from Canada or Mexico with your driver's license. You could just say, I'm an American citizen, show them your license, you could get back in. They're no longer accepting that. There's something called the Western Hemisphere Travel Initiative that they've put in place. It's part of one of these big global multinational agreements. And it says that all travel from the Caribbean, Canada, or Mexico has to have one of these RFID tagged passports or, oops, hang on, what am I doing wrong? There we go. Oh, and I got to share this with you. When they came out with these new chipped passports, page 20 of the new chipped passport has this quote in it. You can't see it very well. It's up there on the top. Every page has a little quote. It says, is our world gone? We say farewell. Is a new world coming? We welcome it. And we will bend it to the hopes of man. That's a quote. I don't know how hard they had to dig to find that one, but that's from Lyndon B. Johnson. And that's on page 20 of the brand new passport. So they're not even joking. Our world is gone, according to these folks. Here's your next bit of evidence. Passport cards. So if you don't want to get a full-fledged passport, I think they cost like $75. You can get them expedited. They're not cheap. They take some time. You've got to apply with the State Department. You've got to provide lots of documentation. The smaller alternative now is called a pass card or an e-passport. It's a little card size of a driver's license, fits right in your wallet, but it has an RFID tag and an antenna in it. That means it can be read remotely from 20 or 30 feet away, right through your wallet, your pocket, your purse, or your backpack by anybody with a reader device. And when I say anybody with a reader device, I'm not talking Homeland Security and State Department and Border Control. I'm talking employees at Walmart. I'm talking hackers off the internet. I'm talking anybody who wants to plunk down a couple $100 and buy a reader can point it at you and read the contents of your driver's license right through your pocket, purse, backpack, wallet, etc. What do they get back? Well, the proponents of this say, well, they're not getting your name or your home address, or your date of birth, or anything else. All they get is a unique ID number. And to that I say, well, this is going to be the Social Security number of the future, right there, encoded in these cards. It's your single unique ID number. You have it for life. It never changes. It's only yours. Doesn't belong to anybody else. And with all the databases floating around, it's just a matter of time before they know that unique ID number 843027 is Katherine Albrecht. That's going to be a no-brainer. There's a reason why we don't wear our Social Security numbers emblazoned across our T-shirts, because even though it's just a number, we know that that number identifies us and a whole lot of information about us. So anybody carrying one of these can have that information scanned at a distance. This was proven recently by a hacker named Chris Padgett. He's actually an ethical hacker. He works for eBay. He got a reader device, went to San Francisco, drove up and down the street, and within a couple of hours, he had downloaded half a dozen people's ID numbers right through the pedestrians walking down the street, right through their pockets. Just driving down the street. Even worse, let's say you don't really want a passport necessarily. You don't even know if you're going to leave the country. If you live in a border state, Washington, Vermont, New York, Michigan, or Arizona, you can actually get this in your driver's license. Now, I think it's brilliant the way they've done this. It's not that you have to get one in your driver's license. You can have the privilege of requesting one in your driver's license if you want to pay $40 extra for it. See, this is what's so brilliant, because we can't go up and protest at the borders and say, why are you issuing these terrible things? Because all the people getting them are not only volunteering, but they're paying for it. So it leaves the rest of us going, there's nothing we can do, really. How do you object to somebody who voluntarily pays $40 to get one of these things? So it really was a stroke of genius not to come in with guns and tanks like they've done in China and force these ID cards onto people. They can get away with that in China. They can't get away with it here. We would object. So they have this new strategy, just like the supermarket card. Nobody makes you take that card. They just penalize you if you don't. You just pay higher prices if you don't take the card, but you're not forced to take it. So what's the big deal? Same thing here. And they penalize you if you don't by making you wait longer, and you wait and see. Once these things become widely adopted, try getting across the border without one. You're going to be waiting in a long line. All right. What are the security problems? For those of you who are not familiar with how RFID works, let me give you just a little technical overview here. Inside of the cards, there's a little microchip, which it's kind of the, well, it's sort of hard to see, but all the lines are kind of converging on it there. The little tiny square on sort of on the left-hand side. And this diagram actually is two cards. It's the blanks, the long stream of blanks that they spit out. So just focus on the rectangle on the left. That microchip right there is hooked up to the lines that run around the edge of the card. That's the antenna. So if you have a card, you suspect it might have RFID. If you X-ray it, you'll be able to clearly see this. Sometimes you can hold a really powerful pen light up to it or hold it up to the light and you can see the antennas in it. But other than that, they look like any other plastic card. Now, that microchip contains your unique ID number. It can contain a whole lot more about you, too. In China, they're encoded with your name, your date of birth, your ethnicity, your reproductive history, your educational history, your employment history, even your landlord's name and phone number, all encoded in the microchip that can be read remotely by somebody just aiming a reader at you as you walk down the street. But here in the States, at least, right now, it's just a unique ID number. How do they get it? There's another example. And by the way, the chips of RFID are super tiny. You see them there on a fingertip. Don't be afraid of those. I know a lot of people are terrified of the idea that they might put that in an injection or in a vaccination, or that they'd put it in a pill and you'd swallow it. But you don't need to be afraid of those, because without the antenna, they cannot transmit. They've got a very, very short read range. You'd almost have to touch something that small to read it. So if you want to get that distance, you have to have the antenna around it. There's another version on a sticker that would go on a product. And they're read, they're stimulated by a reader in the environment. So the reader sends out a pulse of electromagnetic energy, what we'd call a radio wave. That's picked up by the antenna, and it's used as power to power the little microchip to release its data. So the idea, they don't have a battery, they don't have a power source, these things lie dormant, you can't even find them because they don't do anything until they go near a reader. So as you walk through a doorway, for example, the doorway could wake it up and read it. And then as you walk back out of the doorway, it just goes back to sleep and you don't even know it's there necessarily. All right, now let's talk about the direction that we're going as a nation. There was just an article I read this morning that, who is it, Senator Cornyn of Senator Schumer of New York and Senator Cornyn of Texas were both just yesterday or the day before talking about how we need some kind of biometric identifier for all employers in this, for all hires, all jobs in this country. That you would not be able to get a job without having a biometric ID card and approval of the federal government. Talking about it with a straight face. So all of these ID requirements are starting to tighten up. All right, Real ID. You guys may be familiar with the battle that we fought over that. We're not out of the woods. We didn't win that battle. We got them to dump Real ID. That's the national ID card where the federal government was going to take over your driver's license. But now they've reintroduced, or now they're introducing something new called a Pass ID. Same thing. There's really no difference. It's still the federal government in charge of your ID. It's still a national ID system, and it's worse now. Because Real ID, they promised us they wouldn't use RFID, because we all hate RFID. So they promised us, no, just let us get it through. We won't do RFID. Well, now that that's dead in the water, and the Pass ID is their new version of national ID on all of us, we have Janet Napolitano, Homeland Security Director, saying, well, I know what we'll do. We'll make a new Pass ID. Hang on. Let me go back. And we'll make it be an enhanced driver's license. Won't that be good? Do you see how we're kind of like out of the frying pan into the fire here on Real ID? Janet Napolitano has said, seriously, with a straight face, that our new driver's licenses should all be RFID tagged, just like these border crossing cards that are now voluntary in certain states. All right, let me move forward. All right, the Real ID program, which has now been replaced with Pass ID, would require that you carry this one single federal card in order to do the following things. Board a plane, open a bank account, enter a federal building. Let's say you're called in for court. You need to talk to the IRS. You won't be able to get into the building otherwise. To get a job. Scary stuff. To rent an apartment or buy a home. Already laws are going into place in places where they have immigration issues around the country, saying that you have to show some form of authorized federal ID in order to rent a home or buy a home or rent a room in somebody's house. To receive health care. One of the most frightening parts of Obama's new health care plan is we would all be issued a federal health ID number, a federal health ID card, and a federal health electronic medical record. That is the quickest route I can think of to get a national ID card into the wallets of American people, and you better believe it's going to have RFID in it. Maybe not right out of the gate, but it will. So I don't even need to read the legislation or figure out why to oppose national health care. All I have to do is look at the part that says everybody gets a national health care ID number and everybody gets a card and everybody goes into a single federal database to say, no way. All right, so right now your wallet, if you're like most Americans, is bulging with cards. My wallet, by the way, has none. I carry my passport and that's it. I have no cards. I don't carry a AAA card anymore. I don't carry a credit card. I don't have anything. No phone card, nothing. If I don't have cash, I don't buy it. That's it. Most Americans, though, are getting overloaded with cards, 10, 20, 30 cards. In fact, I first made this decision when I was going to Harvard, and I was from California during the summers, and then at Harvard during the year in Boston, and I had 2 wallets. Because I had so many darn cards for each town. I needed the one for the library card and the bus card and the phone card and the supermarket shopper card and the this and the that. I felt like, somebody would ask for my card and I'd be looking for, the 6 of hearts in a deck of cards. So that's where most people are. And they're really ready to dump that for a smart card with a microchip in it. You could have a single microchip on one card and it'd contain everything. Your health club membership, your AARP membership, your NRA membership. You can put it all on one card. Your supermarket shopper card, your Visa card, Discover card, MasterCard, you could put it all on one chip. Plain and simple. And you wouldn't need to carry around all these cards in your wallet. Well, it's actually been proposed that we would do that through the Real ID driver's license. You just do it through your government-issued card. And in fact, it's been proposed that that's one way to offset the unfunded mandate of these cards is you get companies like Visa and MasterCard and your health club, they all pay a fee to get a little slice of the data on your national ID card, and that funds the whole program. There you go. And the public is happy because they've got everything on one card, and the government's happy because they've got everything on one card. And now when they scan you, they get everything else about you too. So that'll certainly be convenient for the FBI and Homeland Security and everybody else. So there really is a push to move in this direction. Now, obviously, the end point of this, if you've got a microchip in your ID card, and the microchip contains all your accounts, all I have to do is walk over to you with a gun or a knife or just an intimidating look on my face, and say, hand it over. I want your card. Or I could just be a pickpocket, reach in your pocket and pull it out. So the next point of this, from a security standpoint, might well be saying, well, this has to be a permanent identifier affixed to you. How about a microchip? How about an implant? We have the technology to do it. It's here. People aren't really willing, but it's here. Microchip implant, the VeriChip, you've probably all heard about it. It's the same thing that you saw with a chip in the antenna, except this time the chip has the antenna wrapped around it. It's stuck into a capsule of medical grade glass, has a little bit of polypropylene plastic on part of it. Sounds real juicy to stick in your arm. And they're injecting them into people's arms right now. Nobody's really taking it in their hand other than a couple of hackers trying to be cool and scary about the mark of the beast. Most of them are going into the arm, midway between the elbow and the shoulder. It's kind of an inconvenient place to put it if you want to make a payment. If I'm walking by the Visa device, it's kind of inconvenient to do this, but it's sure convenient to do that, right? And if I don't have hands, if I'm, maybe disabled or paraplegic, I'm in a wheelchair, then I'm a little bit lower, and I'm still right at the level of the reader, I can just do that and press my head to it. So you can see how the mark of the beast in the right hand of the forehead makes perfect sense. That's where you put it. And if you don't have a right hand, then your forehead, everybody's got a forehead. Everybody. All right, there's your picture of your microchip implant. Shows what it looks like. Don't fall for this thing. It's the size of a grain of rice. It's the size of 2 grains of rice. It's actually pretty big. And they can't put one in you without your knowledge, accidentally. You'll know it. It hurts going in. They have to use a huge injector device. It's not something you can inject with a vaccine. It bleeds. You got to put a Band-Aid on it. And even before they put this honkin' injector device into people, they have to put a little lidocaine injections around it because it hurts so much. So you're not going to accidentally get one of these in you. All right, whoops. Hang on, I'm going the wrong way again. All right, Tommy Thompson, former head of Health and Human Services, most powerful public health official on planet Earth, actually was in charge of that office under Bush when they approved the VeriChip as a medical device. Within months after he resigned from that position, he took a position on the board of directors for the company. And he actually said that he looks forward to the day when all Americans would have one of these implants to manage what? Their electronic medical record. Now that was under Bush. What does Obama want to give us all with Obamacare? An electronic medical record. And in fact, it's already been paid for in the stimulus plan. You guys probably didn't notice, but when they were signing over all those tens, hundreds of billions of dollars, written right into there was funds for the electronic medical record for every American person. Scott Silverman, doesn't he look like a nice guy? He's the guiding force behind the VeriChip Corporation. He has a yacht. He lives in Palm Beach, Florida. He's bilked investors of millions of dollars, and he's living the high life off of essentially the microchip implant scam, because nobody wants a microchip implant. But he keeps pumping out these press releases and making up stories. He's actually been sued for this by shareholders, making up stories to pump up the value of the stock and kind of keep the whole scam going. And meanwhile, everybody's so scared because we all sense that this is the direction things are going that we take this guy seriously. But he is a scam artist. Lots of people investigating this man. He says it's no different than a tamper-proof passport. With concerns about falsified documents, there you go. That's all you need, your microchip implant. More scary, Colombian President Alvaro Uribe actually was speaking to, I believe it was Senator Arlen Specter, this is in the congressional record, and said he'd be willing to microchip implant Colombians that come up to this country to work. And scarily, there's probably a lot of Americans who will go, well, that's a good idea. But I'll tell you, there's a Chinese proverb that says the fire that you light for your enemy often burns you more than it burns your enemy. So you don't want to microchip anybody, folks. All right, now let me bring this back to the mark of the beast. So we know we've got microchip implants. We know we're getting to the point where you're not going to be able not only to buy or sell without a number, you're not going to be able to get a job, rent an apartment, go to a doctor, or walk down the street without a number. You may not even be able to start the ignition on your car without a number. Well, how does this tie in with payment? Because that's what the mark of the beast is all about. Well, right now, millions of locations around the country are having these devices installed. These are swipeless RFID readers. I guarantee you, and don't tell me because it makes me physically nauseous to find out, I guarantee you that there are people in this room with RFID tagged credit cards in your wallets right now. I've never spoken in a group that didn't have them. And now I don't even ask because I always just want to run off the stage screaming. When people wave them, is this one? Yes, that is one. If you want to know what they look like, the Blink cards, you can see on the bottom with that Visa card, you see in between the big Visa and the little Visa, there's kind of a, it doesn't show up very well there, but what it is, it's a series of little waves. It's like sort of the letter C nested inside of each other a couple of times. If you see that, or the words PayPass, see on the blue card on the right that's held up to the reader, it says PayPass, kind of hard to see there. But if you see the words PayPass or that symbol on your credit card, it is contactless. It contains an RFID tag, and you might as well remove the chip from your credit card and put it in your hand, because wouldn't it be more convenient, rather than holding your credit card up to that little reader, to just hold your hand up to the reader? And the more we embrace these horrible devices, the more we're going to get to the point where everybody's just tap and go. You know, all the kids just fingerprint and go into the Sunday school. Everybody just credit card and go into the mini mart and the supermarket and everywhere else. It's a no-brainer to then go, well, we're already used to doing this. Let's just put it in our hands. I'm telling you, we are almost there. We are so close. I feel the hot breath of the beast nipping at my heels. All right, there are technologies out there right now in use at amusement parks and other places where you can just wave your wrist at a reader. RFID tag right in the wristband. Again, getting you ready for that idea of just wave your hand and you can make your payment. You've got ones where you can do it for payphones. Just wave your wrist at a payphone. You've got ones where you could do it for vending machines. Wave your wrist and out pops a Coca-Cola. Oh, there you go. You see them right there. Chip-activated payphones, vending machines, and the like. And they're trying to get us away from change. The financial industry believes that we're wedded to coins for little purchases. Soft drinks, a magazine, a $3 sandwich. So they're trying to get us to use these instant payment devices, wristbands or easy credit cards, to get us away from cash, because they very desperately want us to stop using cash. That's one of their stated goals. All right, Homeland Security wants these documents. Homeland Security is the ones pushing these things into your driver's license. Now, let's say we got them in our driver's licenses, in our credit cards, in our shoes, and everything else. So what? Well, let me tell you so what. When we wrote the book Spy Chips, which I've got copies back there, and please, please, if you value my work, do not make me take those home. Please, don't make me pack them up and ship them back to New Hampshire. I encourage you, I urge you, and I beg you, please buy a copy of the book, because that's how you can support my work. But as my co-author Liz McIntyre and I were authoring the book, we reviewed 30,000 different documents. We went through government documents, we went through white papers, technical specs, promotional documents, confidential documents that I'm sure we weren't even supposed to see that were labeled confidential. And at the end of all of that review, when we put our book together, here's what we discovered. Probably the most scandalous thing was IBM patented something called a person tracking unit. The person tracking unit, that's their name, not mine, so don't call me the conspiracy theorist. They're the ones who came up with it. It's the idea of putting an RFID reader everywhere so that when you have this card or these chips or whatever it is, they can track you. Now, their biggest problem was, how do I get people to carry the cards? How do we get the RFID tags on them? You see this over and over. Virtually every document we read about tracking with RFID was, how do you get the darn cards in the people? How do we get them to carry the cards? And Homeland Security has conveniently resolved that right now with these credit cards, or excuse me, Visa's resolved it with the credit cards. Homeland Security is resolving it with the driver's licenses. Where do they want to put them? Everywhere.
Shopping malls, airports, train stations, bus stations, elevators, trains, airplanes, restrooms, sports arenas, libraries, theaters, museums. In other words, everywhere. There would be one at the entrance of this facility as you walked in. No question about it. And what that would mean is you walk through the doorway with your credit card, with your ID card, with your national ID card, you would be scanned, and they'd know everybody in the room. You can put these readers into doorways. You can put in floors and ceilings. Wide open spaces, they've realized that instead of putting you through a narrow doorway that you realize you're walking through, they can just sandwich you. They just put one in the floor and one in the ceiling, and you just walk through it that way. Scan you top to bottom. They can put them in carpets. They can put them outdoors and use them to film people. Whenever I talk about this, when I'm doing testimony, the lobbyists for the industry always go, that's ridiculous. It's impossible to track people outdoors with RFID. And whenever they say that, I always point to this organization or this amusement park in England called Alton Towers. And what they do when you get there, they give you a wristband with RFID in it so you can conveniently use the pay phone and all that other stuff. So you get the little RFID there. And as you walk around the park, you go on the water slide, you eat a hot dog, every place you pass by, they've hidden these surveillance cameras and RFID readers. So your little wristband triggers the surveillance camera to shoot 15, 30 seconds of video of you walking by, whether you got your arm in arm with your husband or yelling at your kids, whatever you're doing. They film you. And at the end of the day, when you go to leave the park, you walk by this exit desk, and there's a lady sitting there smiling, and she's got a screen behind her. And as the screen picks up your wristband, it starts showing all of the clips of your day and all the things that you did and all the places that you went. And she says, you can buy a keepsake DVD of this for just 20 pounds British sterling. And people actually sign up for it. It's crazy stuff. So they could do that anywhere, and you don't need the keepsake DVD. You can just hand that directly to Homeland Security or to the FBI or anybody else. This is a little futuristic, but it creeps me out. There's a company called Ocean, E-N, Ocean, and they make readers that you can put in the woods. And they don't require any power because they're powered, get this, by the vibrations of the wind and the leaves of the trees. And they work as RFID readers. So if you got a chip in you and you walk through the woods and these things are in the trees, boom, the trees are watching you. It's like something out of Wizard of Oz, those grabby trees. They've got the technology to do it. All right. How close are we to this happening? Let me tell you this, it's happening all over the world right now. China last year was the biggest RFID market on the globe, not for product tagging, which is where they thought the market would be, but for human tagging. They issued over 1 billion RFID tags into nationally mandated, forced at gunpoint in tanks, and China's got those. They force people to carry these remotely readable RFID tags that state your reproductive history, health history, you name it. Readable from a distance by communist government authorities. In fact, if this were a communist gathering in this room right now in communist China, I bet you there would probably be some government officials, and all they'd have to do would be walk that way, that way, that way, and that way, and they would scan every single person in the room and know everything about you. Done deal. It's done. Not proposed, it's done. Who put it in place? Our companies, IBM, Dell, Cisco, Hewlett-Packard, American companies. And in fact, when they were done doing that in China, they were wringing their hands, and I know because I subscribe to all these publications that the RFID industry reads, and they were bemoaning the fact that their huge contract was over. And they said, what are we going to do? We already made all our money. How are we going to make money next year? Well, I'll tell you the answer. They figured it out. Whoops. Where's my other slide? I guess I'm missing my slide. Mexico. Mexico is going to be issuing ID cards, national ID cards to all of its citizens. India is going to be issuing 1.2 billion national ID cards to all of its citizens. Romania is issuing a national ID card to all of its citizens. You go down through the list, and they're getting all the third world countries with hundreds of millions and billions of people in them, people who don't even have running water. And they're being issued high-tech identity documents, and all of their information is being placed into these enormous national databases. This is all part of a global system. Joan Vion is going to be speaking, and I really value Joan's work. It dovetails very well with mine, because Joan talks about the UN agreements that bring all this stuff together. All these ID cards, they're working towards the global ID. They're working towards a system where all these ID cards will be intercompatible and there will be one single global database for everybody on Earth. You know the census, how they're doing GPS readings on the front doors of everybody's houses, and we were all freaking out about that? All right? That's part of a UN program. A UN program to get the GPS coordinates of every human dwelling on Earth. Every hut in Africa, every igloo in Alaska, if they even still have them, every single dwelling on Earth. UN-based. They do it through our census, so we think it's American, but it's global. It's all coming together. The beast is nipping at our heels, guys. All right, so you can do this in India. You can do this in China because people can't really speak out in those countries. The government has almost complete control over the population of those countries. How are they going to sell it in the U.S.? Well, they're doing a pretty good job so far by just scaring everybody to death. 9/11, terrorists, immigrants, illegal immigrants taking your jobs. You know, Juan there mowing your lawn is the biggest threat we face today. So we got to put a national ID card in everybody's pocket. And we got to scan everybody who wants to mow a lawn. And we got to do biometrics to get a job. This is what they're going to use. And the arguments are going to be pretty powerful. You know, the Bible tells us that the powers of the beast are going to be incredible. People are going to think they're living in a time of peace and prosperity, but it's going to be under an iron fist and under the thumb of a global government that does not care about your individual rights. But you will be safe. I'll tell you, when you lived, if you lived in the most surveilled society on earth, which would be the Soviet Union under Stalin, there probably weren't a lot of random muggings and rapes. There probably weren't a lot of abductions. I bet you people were behaving themselves pretty good. Was that a good society to live in? I'll tell you something, that was the most deadly society in human history. Stalin killed over 60 million of his own people. So yeah, we can stop petty crime. We can stop identity theft. We can put a camera in everybody's home. Did you guys hear the news this week that England is actually installing surveillance cameras in people's houses to watch whether they're raising their children right, putting them in bed on time, feeding them the right nutritious meals, and speaking to them nicely? For real, I'm not making this up. 5 years ago, I would have heard somebody on a stage and go, get out of here. For real. And they're spending billions of dollars to do it. So yeah, I can make sure that you don't abuse your kid. I can make sure your kid's in bed every night by 8 o'clock. I can make sure your husband's not surfing the net looking at stuff he doesn't want to. You can make sure of a lot of things. But there's something that always, always historically goes hand in hand with that kind of control. And it is murder. Every time. I've got a bookshelf, now I have almost 2, 4 feet wide, probably 7 feet tall, lining. I've got 6,000 books in my house. But 2 of those bookshelves are all 20th century history. And I'll tell you, the most deadly regimes on earth are regimes where people gave them too much power. And they gained the power because they scared the people and they said, that enemy over there, give me all the power and I'll protect you from him. And then they turned around when they had all the power and they just murdered everybody. The most deadly force on planet Earth is government. Think about that for a minute. Second only to natural causes and disease. But no terrorist, no war. 20th century, R.J. Rummel's research, people's own governments were 6 times more deadly than all of the wars combined. Government killed 6 times more people than World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, you name every war on earth. Government killed more people. That's why you don't want to give your government this kind of power. All right, so why worry if you have nothing to hide? Well, you probably hear that, right? Well, I'd probably worry if I were Jewish. I probably hadn't done anything wrong, but if I were Jewish living under Hitler, I'd be a little concerned. What if you're Christian living under the beast? That's what's coming next. All right, R.J. Rummel, if you've not yet read his work, you should. He's got an extraordinary website. He has devoted 40, 50 years to researching this. I would love to have him up on this stage with me. He is an elderly gentleman, and he's lost his hearing, so he no longer does public appearances. But he's written a book called Death by Government. And I'd say probably second to the Bible, that book has informed my work more than anything else. Because government, when you give it too much power, kills people every time without exception. And it's a helpful argument because it's all academic, it's all written up, and you can show it in black and white to people. And you don't have to talk Mark of the Beast, you can just talk history, and people get it. All right, let me give you, I want to conclude with some good news. All right, here's our Alzheimer's situation. Good Morning America. By the way, Diane Sawyer is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. And Good Morning America has done more to promote the microchip than anybody I know. They actually flew out to New Hampshire to interview me about the downsides of the chip. They let me say like 2 sentences on camera, and then he said, well, that's all we need. It's like, what? You didn't let me say anything. He said, no, that's all we need. And the following day, when they actually ran the piece, or 2 days later when they ran the piece, it was an ad for the Verichip. They had a full animated diagram of the chip going into an animated guy and him going to the hospital and getting scanned. And it was all about that controversy around the chip implants, but it really wasn't. It was a sales job. So the mainstream media loves this stuff. Diane Sawyer loves this stuff. Good Morning America loves this stuff. And this is an excerpt from a Good Morning America piece where they were injecting people and talking about how fabulous it was. They did include a little bit of our protests, but then they had this guy, or actually it was some wife. Some guy implanted his wife, he's like 80, and then he says, those protesters need to butt out. They don't know about, they're butting into my privacy and my personal business. If I want to implant my wife, that's my own business. Blew my mind. So Good Morning America totally turned it around. All right, well, we spoke up. There's our protest. These were the signs that got the pastor to stop and help us out as we're walking down the street. And here's the really cool part. Chips cause cancer. Applaud. For real. They cause cancer. I know it's a revolting picture. You don't want to applaud when you see cancer, but let me tell you the good news about this. We did the research. We found out that between 1 and 10% of laboratory animals that get these chips get malignant, fast-growing, horrible, cancerous tumors, and they die. And the good news about this is that all the people who were getting chipped with Blue Cross Blue Shield and Alzheimer's patients, they've all had their chips removed. How did we do it? I worked for 6 months with the Associated Press, Todd Lewin with the Associated Press, to get this story out. I went down into the basement of the medical library at Harvard. I dug up these dusty journals, and we proved it beyond any shadow of a doubt that these things cause cancer, not just associated with cancer, but cause cancer in these animals. When this story went out in the Associated Press, there were 60,000 mentions of this story across the internet within a week. It was everywhere. And here's the good news. There, now you can really applaud. Here's what we did to Verichip stock. $12 a share to 30 cents a share. And that's an actual screen capture from their Yahoo stock page. Isn't that lovely, watching that little line just go straight down the tubes? So poor Scott Silverman, I guess maybe he had to, I don't know, hold off on that second yacht. But yeah, their stock value, 24 cents a share. They actually were at risk of being delisted and going onto the penny stocks on the pink sheets, because now nobody wants a microchip implant. So they're going to have to come up with something new. That's the good news. They're going to have to find a new strategy. By the way, when it was at $11.60 a share, they were scaring the bejeebers out of me because they had Blue Cross Blue Shield on board. They were claiming they had the American Diabetic Association on board. They were chipping Alzheimer's patients. They had the IT director of Harvard University Medical Center, for heaven's sakes, writing articles and even getting a chip in his own arm, talking about what a good idea this was. So they were going full guns, racing down the track, and this cancer thing just totally tripped them up. Thank goodness. So we bought some time, and now I want to conclude by asking you to take advantage of the time that we bought to help us out. All right, we've sounded the alarm. You'll see Revelation 13:16 there. By the way, an easy way to remember that, because I'm a former school teacher, is you think the last book in the Bible, we know, prophecy, last book, you think 13, it's kind of an unlucky number, chapter 13 in the Bible, and then you go to the last portion of that. So the very end of chapter 13 in Revelation, verses 16 through 18, talk about that mark of the beast. When a time will come when you can't buy or sell without that microchip. Oh, excuse me, did I say microchip? We don't know if it'll be a microchip, by the way. It probably won't be. It'll probably be something that's kind of like the next thing down the road, just like it wasn't the barcode, but the barcode was leading to the chip. So the barcode was every bit. All those people protesting the barcode in the 70s over Mark of the Beast were full-on straight right. They should have been protesting it. All the people in the 30s protesting Social Security numbers were full-on straight right. They should have been protesting it. And we need to be protesting the chip, even if the actual mark winds up being something else. Right. Texas, we had 100 people turn out for a protest at Walmart there. Chicago, we had a bunch of people take off from work one day to protest the rollout of this whole system a couple years ago. New Hampshire. We protested all over the country against this. And now we need your help. We bought some time on those microchips. If you go to my website at antichips.com and you click on legislation, we've got a one-page bill. Plain English. Couldn't be easier to understand. You don't have to be a lawyer. One page. It's called the Bodily Integrity Act, and it prohibits the use of microchips in people. Yes. And we want it introduced here in West Virginia. Please, please, please. So if everybody in this room printed out one page, just a single page, put it in an envelope or walk into your state government office and give it to all your state government representatives, somebody will introduce it. They've been doing it all over the country. And if you need me to, I'll fly out here, I'll testify before your state legislature, I'll support your lawmakers, I'll do whatever it takes to get that passed in the state of West Virginia. Very, very simple thing you can do. Thank you. Oops. And again, I'm going to beg you, please don't make me go home with books. The book is, has anybody read Spy Chips in the room? Can you say something about it? Was it boring? Was it hilarious? All right. The book we were a top 10 Amazon bestseller. It's been called hilarious, brilliant, and also we got called a masterpiece, I think, by one of the reviewers. It's a very interesting book. You will not be bored reading it. You will be a little bit shocked, and you might have some hairs turn gray while you read it, but you will be entertained, and you can be through it in about 6 hours, and you will be an expert on RFID. And I urge you, if you care about this country and the direction we're going, you need to know about this stuff, and you need to tell other people. And please take your copy and pass it on to as many people as you can. If you don't have $25 and you can't buy it today, if you go on our website at spychips.com, there's a place where you can put in your zip code and find your nearest library. So it's not even so much your money I want, although we're going broke doing this work. We could certainly use your support, but it's more your mind. I need you to know this information. All right, and then the final thing I want to let you know, I'm going to be signing books back in the corner. I have 50 books, I think. I think only about 50 or 60 books, and there's 300 people in here. So hopefully there will be enough to go around for everybody who wants one. I also am super excited. If you hear my radio show, I'm on GCN, just like Pastor Butch. I'm on right after Alex Jones from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. You can catch my show 5 days a week, 2 hours a day. And one of the things I've been talking about on my show is I took sort of full circle from what I opened with, my grandmother sitting me down. And I said, grandmothers and grandfathers and moms and dads need a tool to have this conversation with their children. And so I, by the grace of God and in lots of prayer, wrote a children's book about the mark of the beast, where you can tell your children what the Bible says. You can tell them the good ending that comes from that, and how Christ is going to return. He is going to create a new earth. He is going to wipe away all of our tears. He is going to reward the people who refuse to take that mark of the beast. And it has a beautiful ending. And most importantly, I have a contract in the book that your child or grandchild actually signs, just like I did with my grandmother when I looked her in the eye and I promised I would not take that mark of the beast. So, thank you. I have a brilliant illustrator. She does gorgeous full-color watercolors. We finished the sketch phase, so now we know what all the pictures are going to look like. They're black and white, and I have a copy of it back there, just a desk copy that you can flip through and take a look. And I also have little cards that if you'd like to be on the mailing list when the book actually comes out, and you can give me your name and your address and your email or your phone number, however you want me to contact you, I'll let you know when that book's available, and I'll make sure to get those copies into everybody's hands who needs them for their kids. All right, that's it. So we probably don't have time for questions. I think we're down to the wire here. But thank you very much. I've appreciated being up here. Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, the Bible says that we're blessed when we read the words of this prophecy, so I'd like to bless us all. Can I do that? I'm going to tell you. And actually, would somebody mind just renting my children's book up here? Because I'd like to read you a blessing straight out of the Bible. The book, and it's right there in the back. There's you'll see it right there in the front. It's got a paper clipped. It says, I won't take the mark. Should be right there in the front. Great. What I did in this book, realizing that parents and grandparents may not even know the scripture, is we did a picture and then the kids version, but then there's a box that has the scripture in it too, so we can all inform ourselves as well as to what the scripture says about the beast and the rewards for those who don't take the mark. All right, let me read you the good news. All right, well, here's the scary part. And I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, and the dragon, or Satan, gave him his power and his seat and great authority. That's what's coming. That's what's going to embody this global system that's being put together of technology and surveillance. By the way, why the surveillance impact? You know, Satan wants the powers of God. He wants a synthetic version. He can't have a real version. But he wants to know. God knows every hair on your head. He knows every time a sparrow falls from the sky. He's omnipotent. He's omniscient. Satan wants those powers too, which is why he's using sinful humanity to create these technologies to enable him to pretend he's God and watch the British people in their homes and know when a sparrow falls from the sky because they're chipping all the sparrows. But it's not the powers of God. I don't know who he thinks he's fooling, but technology is never going to equal the powers of God. But that's why he's doing it. Just so you know, that's what all this is about. That's why you're going to see this push, more and more of those powers of God, the power to create life, cloning, creepy stuff, fetal research, the power to destroy life, atomic bombs, all the powers of God. Satan's using sinful humanity, getting in the driver's seat of people's sins and driving them to create these technologies. So that's how the whole big picture comes together. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and they who dwell in it. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Now that's the moment we're all going to be in. How can I possibly fight this? Guess what? You don't have to. We're not supposed to. That's not our thing is not to conquer the beast. Christ's going to do that, thank goodness. And all those who dwell upon the earth shall worship him. Think of that for a minute. Whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So there's the bad news. And he causes all, this is Revelation 13, end of the chapter, just like I said, and he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And anyone who doesn't have it can't buy or sell. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666, or 666. We don't know what that is. But you know what? When the time comes, it will be as clear as right now how it is to pay with a number. It'll be very obvious to people. I fully believe that. He's not going to trick anybody into taking this mark. All right. Let me jump ahead. Here's the good news. Well, here's the bad news. So why don't you want to take the mark? You can tell this to your grandkids right off the bat. An angel said with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image or receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture, meaning it's not diluted, it's full strength, into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. That's some hardcore punishment. And the smoke of their torment ascends up forever, and they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast in his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Do you want that for your grandkids? You want that for yourself? I don't. I can't imagine anything worse. And the Bible, by the way, only talks about two things you can't be forgiven for. One of them is blaspheming the Holy Spirit. The other one is taking the mark of the beast. All right. And now let me jump ahead to the good news. And I realize I'm out of time, so let me go up ahead. I love this book. I'm so happy that I've been graced with a beautiful illustrator and a beautiful Bible that I can quote in here. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of those who were beheaded for the witness of Jesus. Because you know what happens when you don't take the mark? You get beheaded. The beast is going to behead the people who don't take the mark. But you know what? It'll probably be a blessing, because it will be a release. Because what's going to happen after that is going to be so awful, you're not going to want to be on this earth. You will not. There will be no more love, no more beauty, nothing from God. It's going to be horrible. So I almost view that as the escape clause and say hallelujah. Those who had not worshipped the beast or his image or had received his mark upon their foreheads, and guess what happens to them? They get to live and reign with Christ for 1,000 years. Hallelujah. Beautiful stuff. All right. And just a final note, so you don't get scared of the mark of the beast. If you're lucky enough, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to say it. If you're lucky enough to be beheaded, for refusing to take the mark of the beast, if you are fortunate enough, then you will be the only people who get to live and reign with Christ for those 1,000 years. The only people. The Bible is extremely clear. Everybody else, all the others who died in Christ throughout all of history, before, after, whenever, they got to wait till that 1,000 years is up. The only people who get to live in the new heaven and the new earth when Christ is right here dwelling among us, and we don't even need a sun because he's so bright, the only people are the people who are beheaded for the testimony of Christ and for refusing to take the mark of the beast. So even though, just as I was saying, sometimes it feels dark and you say, why are you putting me through this? You got to realize that will be the most blessed generation ever to dwell on this earth. The most blessed generation, because they will actually live with our Savior in person on a new beautiful earth for 1,000 years. Nobody else will. Everybody else has to wait. So if that's your grandkids, I know it's scary, but it's good news. The Bible's full of it. You just got to look for it. All right. Thank you all very much. God bless you all.